Hi, I'm Dr. Gerald Dahino, and This Could Be Something. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Kevin Veneracion, a psychiatrist based in General Santos City, Philippines. In this conversation, we talk about what it means to make mental health care more accessible, especially outside of major cities, and how he's been helping build Jensen Psych Mental Health Hub, a space designed for therapy, community, and dignity. We also talk about returning home, staying grounded in purpose, and the quiet work of helping others feel seen and supported. Let's get into it. Hi, Kevin.
Hi,
Hello.
Joel. Seeing
Yes,
you
good
after a
evening.
long time.
Yes, like I think years since med school. Yes. And how are you? You're calling from?
I'm actually calling from Jensen in Mindanao, sa Philippines. So, malayo.
Yes, and I'm here, but it's so nice. Technology can bridge everything these days. So let's begin gently. Can you introduce yourself to the people listening without talking about your career? Just you as a person first.
Right.
Yes.
So, first of all, just want to say hi to everyone listening to Dr. Gerald's show. So, I'm Kevin. Right now, I'm a father to a 2-year-old. I live here in the province in the Philippines, and the things that I like doing aside from spending time with my kid, usually I do a lot of sports. I watch a lot of films, and then ever since I met my wife, I've also started watching theater because my wife is involved with theater. So I've my world basically opened up, especially when it came to the arts. When I started meeting my wife, and a lot of I guess, the things I enjoy now belong in those areas.
First, let's start with your background. Let's talk about psychiatry. That's what
Okay.
I'm curious about. What led you to psychiatry? Was it very clear to you at the beginning or did it come slowly?
Well, definitely not. It really wasn't in my head when I started med school, when I started medical school. I used to think that I wanted to be a cardiologist or a pediatrician. But I think the big reason for that is I grew up in Mindanao. In Mindanao, mental health was never really talked about, especially when I was growing up. So wala talaga sa isip ko. The psychiatry never crossed my mind because nobody ever really talked about it. I remember growing up, the only time psychiatry would come up is when, people talk about psychotic people, crazy people. And that was the stigma, right?
Yeah.
So for those aspiring to be doctors, there really wasn't anything that would want you to become a psychiatrist if that was the stigma that you saw growing up. But then honestly, Gerald, this one's a bit personal, which is okay naman with me. But when I was in the middle of med school, kasi I guess we had a big family crisis, which happened for like a few years. And during that time in our lives, malaking upheaval. It was a really big upheaval for everyone. We moved from Jensen to Manila. The whole family did, and it was a time that my mom really needed somebody to lean on, basically. So for those really difficult years, I guess I was the person she could lean on. And that's when I started realizing that how come iba yung reaction ko with this difficult thing that we're going through compared to maybe other members of my family. How come kaya kong makinig na hindi ako nagbe-breakdown, hindi ako umiiyak. And so that was my first taste of empathy and being able to listen to people without it really consuming you. And then when rotated in the hospital when I was in clerkship internship and I came across psychiatry as a rotation, that's where I started realizing na, uy, but parang bagay dito yung strengths ko, that I could be there for people, listen to people, help them give words to what they're going through. And then after that, kind of detach and let go. So I don't bring everybody's problems with me when I go home. And apparently not everybody really, I guess, compartmentalizes like that. Pero kailangan talaga siya sa mental health space, or else, sobrang bigat. It's gonna be too so heavy if you bring the world's problems with you or everybody's problems with you, since you listen to problems every day. So yun, I came across psychiatry when I started rotating. It started to make sense in my head. And then I read about yung ikigai, Japanese concept ng ikigai, di ba? And it was like the intersection of what you're good at, what you enjoy, what's practical for you, and what helps the world, no? And tumugna siya sa akin na all those four areas overlapped sa mental health, sa psychiatry, and that's how I realized this is my calling.
Oh, that's so nice. Actually, yeah, I can relate sort of because
Mm,
my med school essay actually was about psychiatry because I thought
mm,
when I would go to med school, I would become a psychiatrist. That was first on my list.
mm,
And you were right. I realized I cannot compartmentalize. I will
mm.
bring it home with me. If I listen to someone's problem, I could really get affected like for days. So I said, I don't think this is for me. And my first question when we were rotating to psych, I asked a psychiatrist, how do you do it? How do you do it that you listen to all of their problems? And actually, their problems are really heavy.
Yeah.
How can you do it? And he said, it's like a circle. Like we have someone to share it to, and someone also shares with us. So I was like, I
Mhm.
don't think I can do it. You then like, oh, but like big props to you. And it's so nice you mentioned about Ikigai because it's also
Mm,
a theme of the podcast. And I do coaching now.
mhm.
So sometimes, it's when do you know that it's for you? Yeah, you're good at it, you enjoy it, it's something that's practical and it also helps the world. Because the purpose has to be there. I super like it. I
Yes.
super resonate with it. Yes.
Mm,
And so, speaking of purpose, you trained in a top institution, but you chose to come back to Jansan.
mm.
Yes. What made you return?
Well, I think it was the realization, Gerald, that even when I was in Manila, I see a lot of people struggling with it, not being able to, I mean, burdens that they're carrying that they don't really feel comfortable, I guess, sharing or expressing kasi nga may stigma. And I already saw these people in Manila, and then napaisip ako, how much more sa provinces? If this is what I'm seeing in Manila, there's a huge gap in terms of the mental health care na naibibigay sa kanila. How much more do sa mga tao na dun sa hometown ko, dun sa home province ko. Honestly, I really felt scared going home kasi I wasn't sure kung if there was gonna be a space for me there. I wasn't sure how mental health care psychiatry was going to be received. Right now, I've been here for the past 2 to 3 years. After I completed all of my training in Manila, right now there's only like 5 or 6 psychiatrists in the city, and there's less than 10 in the whole region. So that's region 12. So parang talagang underserved. And it was that mission sa sarili ko na parang I wanna go to the areas where I feel like I'm needed more. Even if sabihin natin na parang I would have been fine in Manila kasi underserved pa rin naman dun. Pero mas underserved dito sa provinces if I don't go home, yung iniisip ko, if I don't go home, yung sunod na psychiatrist na uuwi. Because before I went home, the last psychiatrist na umuwi ng Jensen was like 15 years my senior. So sa 15 years na yun, ang psychiatrist na umuwi sa province ko. So ganun ko siya medyo inisip na parang parang I wanted to be of service to the people who needed it more,
That's
parang gano'n.
amazing, actually. I didn't know that 10 in a region. My God.
I think I'm not sure actually if kami ang pinakakonti. Kasi right now, parang I'm part of like the Mindanao group of psychiatrists. So marami sa Davao eh. There's a lot of psychiatrists in Davao, probably 20 or more. And then sa region namin parang less than 10.
Mm.
So talagang hindi evenly distributed. Most of them in Manila actually.
And you talked about the stigma. Yeah. In the Philippines, in general, not just in the province, you'll think if you go to a psychiatrist, you are psychotic. I mean, the most common term, baliw ka,
Yeah,
buang ka, you don't know what reality is. But
yeah.
they don't understand that the brain can also get sick, like any other organ in the body. And even if you don't get sick, you also have to take care of your brain, like any other organ in the body. Let's talk about your healing philosophy, about the bio-psycho-socio-spiritual approach. And I like it so much. What shaped it?
So, my mentor kasi Jerel is, his name is Dr. Banaab. So, he's 90 years old. He's the oldest living psychiatrist in the Philippines. And he is the father of child and adolescent psychiatry sa Philippines. So, siya ang nagdala ng child and adolescent psychiatry from the US. Dinala niya sa Pilipinas. So he was one of my most influential mentors during my training. I would say na I got pretty close with Dr. Banag also. Di lang professional pero personal mentorship also. And he would always tell me that whenever he would mentor students, teach students, the first question he'd ask in class would be, what do you think psychiatry is? And then, syempre, iba-ibang sagot. Some would say study of mental illnesses. Some would say study of the brain, of the mind. And then he would say na, you know what, psychiatry is actually the study of the human person who just happens to be sick. And that really resonated with me, that the focus will always be on the person himself, herself. And when you go to psychiatry, you will realize that is truth that is for psychiatry more than any other field of medicine. Because it's only in psychiatry now when we do our interviews, talagang buong buhay. It's the whole life of the person that you're looking at, from childhood until the present problem. It's not, and you're not just looking at the symptoms, but you're also looking at what happened inside their mind, dynamics ng relationship, support systems, all of those things. So that has always stuck with me. Even now that I'm actually teaching now also in a state university. That's also how I open my first day. I always ask them, what do you think psychiatry is? Looking at the whole person, not getting caught up with the diagnosis, always telling myself na, behind every symptom, behind every illness is a story, and a human person who just wants to be understood. And that's also why the reason why I always do therapy in my sessions. It's not just medications. Kasi I feel like if I just do medications, it's just half of the equation. And maybe this is my segue na rin na here in Mindanao, what we also did was, here in Jensen, actually, to be specific, we built a mental health hub because we also believe that healing doesn't just happen in the therapy sessions or in the consultations. Healing also happens in community. Healing also happens in safe spaces. Healing also happens when you're met with dignity. No? And that's what we're trying to build here in our province.
It brought me back to when I did nursing school.
Yeah.
I did nursing in Cagayan de Oro, which is in the same island in Mindanao, but it was in a different province. There was no mental health facility in my region. So we
Yeah.
had to go and be immersed in Davao, PMC. And I was in my third year of college. I did not know what psychiatry was really. That was also my concept. And then seeing health stories of people who have been institutionalized for so long, and then you really get to realize how underserved they are. Sometimes, yeah, healing is community as well, because these people, they've been uprooted now from their families because they got sick. And then the moment they're deemed healthy for discharge, actually, they don't have a community to go back to because their family is not ready to take care of them.
Yeah.
And so
That's true.
you get to understand how, some people also, they don't heal because they don't have a community. And yeah, I was supposed to go to the Jensen Psych Mental Health Hub, and it's such a nice space. I saw all the photos of it. It's so nice.
Thank you, thank you. Sabi nga, sabi nga namin, Jerel, na parang if you see it online, or just our friends would say, parang hindi nila akalain na it's in Jensen. Kung hindi nila alam yung pangalan, no? Parang, and parang that's really the vision of yung wife ko at saka yung architect na they work together. But thank you, thank you.
Yeah. And then I was reading one of your posts about spaces, like spaces also heal. So what did it take emotionally, logistically, to make it real?
Well, practically speaking, syempre, parang you need a lot of resources to build a commercial space like that. And siguro surface level, yun yung biggest sacrifice for me na we were not really in a good spot when it came to financial resources at that time. But parang we feel like it was meant to be for us kasi we saw that space in a new building in Jensen. It was the only unit left. And then it was surrounded by, kasi ang kasama namin sa building nun was mga puro self-care na, like, there was a cafe, there was a nail salon, there's a massage parlor, there's like a store for baking goods. So everything was about taking care of yourself. And we felt, but parang tayo ata yung kulang dito, ah. So you do your pampering, your self-care sessions, and if that's not enough, you go talk to someone, see if that helps you out. And then the joke now is Philippine Airlines moved in into the building. So if everything fails, go book a flight. Go book a flight. So it's really a self-care building. But yeah, parang kumbaga, we took a leap knowing now we were really in a good place financially, but we felt like it was for us kasi. But aside from the practical aspect, it also took a lot of faith on our part that people would actually come to us if we build a space for them. we were not sure. We were not sure if people were going to come. And I mentioned my wife earlier. My wife is a creative kasi yun yung kanyang industry. Primarily, she's a design director for theater, among other jobs. So she's really the creative force behind Jensen Psych Mental Health Hub. So what you see now, what we've been able to build, vision niya yun eh. And we actually have these conversations about hindi mukhang clinic yung Jensen Psych, no? It can actually look like a cafe. Pero mapagkamalan siyang cafe if only we serve drinks. She said that that was intentional. That design was intentional because may stigma na nga sa province. So she wanted to destigmatize the place for people to come and for people to actually normalize seeking help. Siyempre, kung sa hospital kami based, then there's really that stigma na people only go to hospitals when they're really, really sick, diba? So we wanted to build a space like even if you're not really sick, but you just need to you just want to talk to someone, there's a place you can go to for that. And siguro that sabihin na natin na parang that's part of the driving force sa amin na we plan to include workshops, art therapy, music sessions, all different kinds of healing, coaching, no? Like what you're doing, all different kinds of healing. Actually, ang plan namin by next week is we're gonna introduce early intervention, teachers for early intervention for kids with developmental needs. So we're trying to touch across I guess different definitions of what healing looks like. So hindi talaga kami this place we built, it's really not parang doctor dyan. So everybody's welcome as long as it contributes to healing. So that was the dream, and that in itself, syempre, came with its own challenges. Like actually looking for the right people to build this space with us.
I agree. Because if you're in crisis, if you're in a mental health crisis, like going to the hospital, you'll be in
Yeah.
the ER, it's so noisy, like
Yeah.
it's not gonna help. And the workshops, I've been seeing a lot of your workshops. So that's also very nice. Kasi again, healing is it's not doctor centered. There are a lot of
Mm-mm.
people you can involve. It takes a community also to heal. And then, as you've said earlier, when you started, you said you were unsure, you were scared of moving into
Mm-mm.
to the province. Where do you draw strength to push forward into realizing all those visions?
Well, I guess I guess number one is my wife shared the vision with me, no. Parang it wasn't only me dreaming, no. My wife is also a mental health advocate kasi. So we felt like parang this was something that both of us cared about deeply. And I guess when you feel like you're not the only one working towards something, mas nagiging madali siya, no? Kasi meron kang masasandalan. And the siguro also yung shared yung shared hope namin dalawa mag-asawa na parang what we're doing, even if it might take a few years, parang it's something now we can tell ourselves as we grow older na we're doing something with our lives, no? And we're doing something that actually means something. And siguro that's also medyo, a bit of sa wife ko, but it's also one of the reasons why I feel like she's really the person for me. Kasi the things that matter to me, the things that I care about, my values, talagang nasa kanya din. So, yun, parang that kept us going. The hope, the vision na you don't have to go far away. You don't need to go to Davao. You don't need to go to Manila just to heal, no? And actually, one of our, sabihin na natin, slogans or motto namin sa Jensen Psych is healing should never be out of reach. Kasi yun talaga yung namin. Because healing should never be out of reach. That's why we built this place. And that's hopefully the vision that, that we're always going to be working towards.
I actually like your workshops. I said, oh my gosh, this is so needed. I'm sending it all the time to one of our counselors or former counselors in my hometown. I was like, train more people for this. Train more people. Because
Thank
again,
you.
even GPs, I'm a GP here.
Yeah.
When it comes to psych, it's still parang a little fragile for me. Once I know it's a psych case, immediately I'm like, this is not for me. This is for a psychiatrist. So I'm
Mm-mm.
not supposed to touch this. I still have that in me. The right diagnosis has to be there first. And with psychiatry, it's all intermingled. Especially with when people are in crisis, it can look like any other the untrained eye, it can look like any other condition. You can appear as any other thing in the
Yeah.
DSM-5. Like, even if DSM-5 will just tell you everything by list.
Sorry, if I may add, no, since you mentioned DSM-5, parang I always tell my students na even though DSM-5 is very helpful para consistent ang diagnosis across different countries. I mean,
Yeah.
hopefully, yun yung point niya talaga, no? Na consistent ang diagnosis. You really cannot just diagnose a person, at least understand the person, na DSM-5 lang ginagamit mo. Kasi checklist lang siya eh, symptom checklist lang. So you really have to understand yung what's going on underneath, no? If those symptoms are basically signals of what's going on underneath sa loob ng utak, sa loob ng isip. No? Tapos, I just wanna add, kasi you mentioned about GPs, no, like yourself. One of the things that has always been a problem in the province is access, di ba? Na parang kulang naman talaga ang mental health professional. So, paano yung access to mental health care? And a few provinces here sa region namin, they approached me because they want na ako yung maging psychiatrist sa lugar nila. And I told them, it cannot be na ako kasi ang dami lang hawak na tao, ang dami lang hawak na hospitals. One psychiatrist cannot see all of those people. So ang sinagot ko after sa kanila and what we're working on now is we need to build a system. We need to build a public health system, a referral system wherein the frontliners, even the GPs, even the rural health officers, no, sila ang titingin sa mental health na patients and then itatawag lang nila sa akin. So, that's what we're trying to build siguro this next few months na magkaroon kami ng referral system na maayos so that frontliners don't feel afraid about seeing mental health patients. And the DOH actually has a program for that, which is the MH-GAP, Mental Health Gap Action Program. So, ang DOH ng mga rural health na doctors na marunong sila mag-diagnose ng mental health conditions. And I'm actually, sometimes kinukuha nila ako to train those doctors.
Yeah, because it's not easy, honestly. Anxiety can sometimes appear as depression, and then it turns out to be something else. So the thing is, it's not just about giving medications, it's also getting the right diagnosis. Because
Yeah.
as much as possible, they want to stop the suffering. And yeah, that's why we need your expertise. And so, talking about systems, how do you balance it now as being both a doctor and a systems builder?
I'm honestly struggling. As in, I'm honestly struggling juggling the different roles that I have. Kasi in terms of systems building, so dyan papasok yung government work ko. So, yun nga na parang I'm trying to build a system with the provincial health na pwedeng tawagan lang ako instead of ako yung titingin, ma-empower yung mga front lines. And then, I'm also teaching in a state university so government siya na med school. So it's Mindanao State University. I think that's also building systems by training future doctors na kahit hindi sila mag-psychiatrist. Ang sabi ko sa students ko, alam mo guys, kahit hindi kayo mag-psychiatrist, it's okay. Ang goal ko lang talaga is maintindihan nyo what mental health is and how to help in your capacity. No? Lalo na pag kayo na yung nandun sa field. You don't need to be a psychiatrist to be able to help a person who's going through a mental health crisis. If I'm able to teach my students that, I feel like yung system itself, talagang it's gonna receive a big boost, no? When there are more, sabihin na natin, mental health aware na doctors, I think that's gonna have a huge impact. So anyway, so you have my government work, and then I have my clinical work as a doctor sa private. So I'm honestly stretched thin. As in like I work Monday to Saturday na buong araw, but it's something I feel like I need to sabihin natin may kailangan magbago. Something has to give. Kasi I also need to take care of myself. It's fulfilling work, but it's also tiring work.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not easy to balance all of these things. I'm super lucky. When I messaged you about this, I said, will Kevin say yes? I have an idea of how busy it is. It's like, imagine if
Yeah.
you're in Mindanao, to get a schedule for your psychiatrist will take so long because it's all fully booked. That's how needed psychiatrists are in Mindanao. I appreciate you saying that there is struggle in making this, but this is also meaningful work for me. So I
Yeah.
also have to try to find a way to make all of these work because this is something that's meaningful for me.
You mentioned na it takes a long time to book an appointment with the psychiatrist, matagal yung wait time kasi nga konti lang. That's also the reason why we built Janssen Psych. Kasi I realized when I first came here na ang tagal ng pila if it's just missing people. And number two, the bigger reason is not everybody can afford doctor fees, especially in the province. And that's the reason why diverse yung aming mental health personnel sa clinic. The reason why we built the hub mismo, so that people have options when it comes to healing na hindi nila kailangan mag-antay ng ilang buwan para makita yung doctor for them to start healing on their own. Because there are some people naman na kailangan lang ng kausap para mag-umpisa na yung healing nila. Therefore, our therapists, our psychologists, we work together and build Janssen Psych. And this is actually the first clinic in Region 12 kung saan nagsama ang psychiatrist and psychologist. Kasi the practice here is hiwalay. Ang psychiatrist may sariling clinic, and then the mental health centers are usually psychological centers na wala naman silang psychiatrist nila, na it's run by psychologists. So this is the first one na nag-join forces kami. And honestly, parang I feel like it was really the right move kasi mas marami kaming natutulungan, no? Parang ganun.
Yeah, that's nice. That's really smart because sometimes you don't need to talk to your psychiatrist. You just have to talk to your
Mm,
therapists. And then you're
yeah,
all okay. Like, especially for people who are struggling with their mental health, sometimes you spiral. You just have to talk to
yeah.
someone. You only have to talk to someone. If you have to wait for your psychiatrist, what if your psychiatrist is available next week? And then,
Or next
right?
month.
Yeah.
Plus, not everyone needs medications also. There's also that, no,
Yeah.
na there are people who just need to be seen, to be heard, and malaki na yun sa kanila.
Agree. Because when we studied psych, as you said, we look at the whole person. And I was so surprised, even when they were in the womb, where they wanted or
Mm,
unwanted, that mattered.
yeah.
And that feeling of belonging, our brain is actually still the caveman's brain, which is built on community. Because the caveman knows that for it to survive, it has to have a community around it.
Mm,
So herd mentality is actually based on survival. And so if people feel like they don't belong, they don't have a community to go to, that's when they feel all of these things mentally,
yeah.
spiritually, emotionally, because they're not connected to anyone. So providing that community for them is actually also healing in itself. They don't have to see you per se. Like you
Yeah.
can just delegate the other work of healing to other people. That's so nice.
I I really like that you're stressing community because, well, number one, we even with our diverse na mental health personnel and options, not everybody pa rin can afford those. So one thing we did with Jensen Psych is the first ever in our region also, we built a peer support group for mental health. Libre. It's a free mental health support group. One Saturday a month, usually 30 to 40 people go per month. And then ang format namin is a therapist or a psychiatrist like myself would just talk for like 10 to 15 minutes on whatever the topic is for the day or for the month, I mean. And then we break into smaller circles, and then that's where the sharing happens. So the beauty, the healing power the of of the support group, which is called Pahulayan, nandun talaga sa finding community in each other. And that's what heals them, no? And syempre for some kailangan pa ng further intervention, but for others naman parang it's a really kumbaga it's a really big first step, and sometimes it's enough. Parang ganun. And um one last thing I want to add about community is I've always believed that humanity doesn't exist in a vacuum, no? Na na hindi ka tao just because biologically tao ka. Humanity exists in the relationships we have with each other. So, even nung hindi pa ako psychiatrist, actually nagpatattoo na ako dito ng Ubuntu here sa aking
Yeah.
ano, so Ubuntu diba is like an African concept that a person is a person through other persons. So yun yung kaya ibig sabihin, and humanity exists in, the bonds we form with each other. So yun lang.
Oh, that's so nice. I actually like the peer group idea because sometimes you don't need to be like to see a mental health specialist just to know that someone is resonating with your struggle and someone will listen to you with your struggle
Yeah.
is enough. The name Pahulayan, to take
Yeah.
refuge, to rest.
The
That's so
rest. Yeah.
nice. Yeah. It's
Thank
so
you. Thank
nice.
you.
Everything you're doing, I really wish like people can have more resources like that, and not just in Mindanao, but everywhere.
Yeah.
It's nicer now actually because people are more open to mental health compared to
Yeah.
before, but of course there is still a struggle to that. For you personally, because talking about mental health and health maintenance, what does that look like?
Me taking care of my mental health. Well, it starts for me. It starts with the family. I listen to people all day, and then whenever I get home, my wife particularly is strict with me about this. I need to let go of the work that not yet that na hindi ko pa natapos. No, I need to let it go and just come back to it the next day, so that that evening I can actually be fully present for my family, for my wife and my kid. So that is basically what refuels me. That's basically what refills my cup. Na I'm able to feel na parang, ito yung purpose, ito yung one of the bigger things na nagbibigay ng purpose and meaning sa buhay ko. It's not just my work, it's also seeing my kid growing up, the little moments, even if I'm not really helping a person at the moment, there's still somebody who sees my worth, no, na bilang tatay, basically. So, that's number one sa mental health ko. And number two is yung personal hobbies ko. And I always tell this to my clients, to my patients na hindi pwede na wala kang tinatabi na oras maski 30 minutes sa araw. Something that is just for you. Labas sa responsibilidad ng pagiging nanay or tatay, labas sa responsibilidad ng pagiging employee. You need a few minutes a day to do something that is purely for you. Some would tell me, Gerald, na parang, "Dog, paano yan?" Kasi 'pag umuwi ako ng bahay siyempre dahil nanay ako, after work, for example, nanay lang sa bahay, parang marami na akong responsibilities. So I actually tell them, "Hindi ka I mean, 30 minutes later than you normally would." 'No? Kasi kung alam mong hindi ka makakapahinga sa bahay, kung alam mong wala kang personal time dun, then bago ka umuwi, dun mo na kunin yung personal time mo. Kasi hindi puwedeng wala. And I try to apply it also to me, parang gano'n. And siguro yun, parang from time to time, me and my family, we try new things, we go to new places. I mean, nothing too fancy naman, parang dito lang sa Mindanao pa rin. Or actually dito lang nga sa Region 12 eh. Just to feel like hindi masyadong routine.
Yeah, taking time for yourself. Because in executive coaching, I see a lot of
Yeah.
people, of course, building their careers, they want to take the next steps. But some of them actually are burned out. And then, yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. When I make them do the time and energy study, they figure out, oh, I'm not doing anything for myself, and that's why I'm burned out. Kasi as much as you want to contribute to other people, you're also a person. You also have to
Yeah.
give something to yourself. Yeah, and that's so nice. And I think one post that I really like, I forgot now what it stated specifically, but the essence of that, I think, was it either Main or you? Parang, or just
Mm.
Main tagging you, na parang, there are weeks na parang, it's you that's doing 100%, Main is doing the
Mm.
100%, but you're both reminded na, oh, it's okay, next week ako naman yung babawi. And like, oh, that's
Mm.
so nice. That's a very nice concept in relationships na, yeah, I can't be 100% all the time, but we're all
Yes.
still trying. And it's
Mm.
nice to feel supported. And so, yeah, your kid, how it's like to have a toddler.
There are really good days, there are really wonderful days, but there are also
Yeah.
days na siyempre frustrated ka, siyempre pagod ka, 'no? Especially if di natin wala sa mood yung bata, 'no? But, parang that's also what makes you, I guess, treasure the good moments, the good memories also. Is that parang kasi kung puro good moments, 'di ba? If it's all beautiful things, then you're not really gonna appreciate it as much. Ako, it's the same thing, 'di ba, sa mental health na parang kung never ka na naman nakakaramdam ng lungkot, how are you gonna appreciate what feeling joy is, no? Or what feeling happy would feel like. 'Di ba? So, good days and some that are more frustrating, pero definitely fulfilling,
Yeah, it's
parang
just the
gano'n.
reframe. And with toddlers kasi, that's the time that they enforce that they're their own person.
Yeah. Yeah, like sisigaw minsan kung hindi mabigay yung gusto, parang gano'n. Pero in fairness to my kid, 'no, my wife and I say na parang I don't really consider that this is like a terrible two, kasi 'di ba uso yung terrible twos na
Yeah.
face for a lot of parents. we don't feel like it's a terrible two for us. We actually enjoy him being 2 years old because he's more independent, mas naririnig yung gusto niya, mas lumalabas na yung personality niya. So we're really enjoying this toddler stage.
Yeah, I saw it with my nephew. They're
Mm.
just throwing a tantrum because they can't express what they want. But once you teach them, and my nephew also didn't go through those crazy tantrums because we taught
Mm.
him very early about this feeling. You're happy. Are you frustrated? Are you
Yeah.
upset? So then he knows, like, oh, I'm upset. Why are you upset? You're not spending time with me. I just want to spend time with you. And yeah, that's so nice actually to teach kids very young at an early age, emotional awareness, being able to express. And also, I think the reframe of before I thought of emotions, and there will always be uncomfortable and comfortable emotions, but it
Yeah.
doesn't mean that if the emotion is uncomfortable, you should not feel it. Because if you don't feel the uncomfortable one, you won't be able to feel the comfortable one. There is
Mm.
no joy without sadness, and sometimes they can even occur together.
Yeah.
So it's a rainbow of emotions, and it's so nice now that society is more open to it.
I like that you said that, no, na parang just because a feeling is uncomfortable, di naman sabihin na kailangan mong hindi maramdaman, 'di ba? And I always teach this to yung mga talks ko sa mga communities, no, and even to my clients na my patients na you cannot judge yourself for feeling a certain kind of way. Kasi hindi mo naman piniling ganun yung maramdaman mo. Feeling is not a choice, no? Feeling is not voluntary. That's why when it comes to our therapy, to our coaching, 'di ba ang ating tinuturo is you focus instead on yung thoughts and yung actions. Kasi yun yung meron kang mapabago. Pero all emotions are valid eh. Di mo naman mapilit na you don't feel this way or you should feel this way. So I really like that. At saka yung sinabi mo na I resonate dun sa sinabi mo na as early as 2, 3 years old, we're trying to teach our kids, our nephews, parang ways to take care of their mental health better or to identify feelings and emotions. On our end, what we do, actually main talaga is the one leading this. Whenever a kid throws tantrums, tinuturuan niya mag-breathing. So for example, sumisigaw, um, may gusto. Ang sasagutin ni main is parang Dylan kasi name ng kid ko, parang Dylan, need muna natin mag-count to 10. For example, no, you need to count to 10 and then breathe in, breathe out. Tapos sasabayan. And then after mag-count to 10 and breathe out, that's when she asks my kid na parang, so you can tell mommy na ano yung gusto mo. So parang we're trying to teach him na you don't give what they need when they're throwing a fit, but if they're able to regulate their emotions, that's when they get what it is that they're asking for, if it's reasonable.
Yeah,
Parang
agree.
ganun.
Emotions are all valid. But then again, what you do about it, you should be more careful as long as it does not hurt
Uh,
you and hurt other people. So you find
mhm.
ways to express it in a way that is healthy. And I think that's an underrated skill because I like reading, and I think I give this to everyone. I always talk
Mhm.
about this. I think you know this.
No, I haven't read that actually.
All the basics of
I'm not
mental health.
familiar. Why has nobody
All
told me this before?
yes.
Okay.
It's like kindergarten for mental health, or like grade school
Mm-hmm.
skills, like all the beginning skills that people should learn about their mental health. And I give this to everyone because it talks about everything on dark places, motivation, emotional pain.
Yeah.
Everything is there and all the basic skills are here. That's the beauty of this book. And then you realize, oh nga no, why has no one taught me how to manage my emotions, how to manage emotional pain, how to manage low mood? And
Yeah.
sometimes you realize those are simple things lang that you can do. And then sana pala it didn't snowball to this very big emotion that I'm now carrying, or
Yeah.
this big crisis. Yeah,
Ako
good.
naman the book that I guess parang helped me a lot when it came to mental health. So it's called
Yeah.
The Book of Joy. So the
Oh,
Book
I'm
of
gonna look
Joy
for that.
yung title niya. So it's basically the conversations between the Dalai Lama and
Mm.
the Archbishop of Africa, Desmond Tutu. So it's basically
Oh,
yung friendship and conversations nila. The main message that I carried with me and I teach my patients is how we look at suffering. Yun yung pinaka nag-resonate with me. Kasi if we're always gonna ask ourselves, paano ko bang tatakasan tong problema ko? Paano ko ba sisiguraduhin na hindi ako masasaktan? No, how am I gonna escape pain? If that is always our question, then we're gonna live our lives always frustrated and disappointed because pain is part of life, no? But if we reframe it to how am I gonna use this pain to help myself, then you're gonna go through life na hindi ka takot masaktan, hindi ka takot mahirapan, kasi alam mo na you will always be able to take value from it. Some of my clients would ask me na parang, Doc, paano yan? Kunwari abusive yung tatay ko. Parang, how am I gonna use that in my life? And I tell them, wouldn't that teach you na when you're a parent yourself, you would know what not to do so that your child doesn't go through the same childhood that you went through? And then that in itself will become healing for you. No, you heal your inner child by giving your child the childhood that you wanted to be given to you. Sana. So yun yung biggest lesson for me from that book, and that's why I like that book. I'm sure I'm gonna like that book that you recommended. Kasi honestly, anything na very helpful sa mental health, parang I really like reading it.
I like how you said about suffering. Yeah, life is never without suffering. And the earlier
Yeah.
you accept that life will always have pain, life will always have suffering, the easier it is for you. And yeah, correct. Like the highest form of getting through any crisis is meaning making. Because once
Yeah.
you find meaning in what you're going through, then you're able to realize, oh, I have to go through that because this was the meaning out of it. But not to romanticize it in a way, but more
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
like, yeah, to realize that this is the meaning of that suffering. Yeah, the more you resist suffering, the more you resist pain, the more it becomes difficult for you, or like running away
Yeah.
from your problems. What if you're the problem? There was a
Actually,
coaching book. No, sometimes because you have to snap people out of it, lalo na if they're spiral. And they're like, most people, sometimes people's solutions are when they face something, I want to escape, I'm gonna move to another country. And it's like, why? If you move to another country, will it solve everything? Will it solve who you are? You're still you. You're still gonna carry the baggage. And so, like, it's still you, new. Parang, it takes work. And I think in the first podcast, I talk about it. It takes a lot of work and vulnerability and courage to face those parts of yourself. So finally, you can embrace a better life.
that is
Yeah.
true. Although, General, I must say, no, na even if both of us said, di ba, na pain is part of life, inevitable siya, I just want to
Yeah.
emphasize to our listeners na hindi rin siya learned helplessness, na
Yeah.
parang, pain will always be part of life, so parang I'm not gonna try anymore, I'm not gonna work on myself anymore, I'm not gonna do my best anymore because sabi ni Doc, there will always be disappointment daw. Hindi naman ganun, no? Parang,
Yeah.
parang pain is part of life, tanggapin natin yun, but then it's still an active process of using that pain, transforming that pain into something of value. So,
That's why I like the concept of anti-fragility, and I teach this to all of my coaches. Resilience kasi is once this is the problem, you got hit, then bumagsak ka. Kaya mong bumalik sa level na yun. Anti-fragility is once this is the problem, you got hit, you went down, then you examine yourself. How can I be better? So that when I face that problem again, or when I face a situation like that again, hindi na ako babagsak. So that
that's
concept
nice.
that gets you through life. Kasi if you just get back to that same level, edi bumalik yung problem, wala, bagsak ka ulit.
It's gonna be a cycle, yeah.
Yes, but
That's
imagine
true.
like, what systems can I put in? How can I be better so that when I face that next problem, I'm gonna be better myself. And again, like what you're doing, when I told people na, oh, he's practicing in Jansan, people are like, really? And I said, he's taking good care of people in Jansan. He's bringing the level of care that we only see in big cities. It's really bringing it there. And that's the beauty of it kasi parang realizing na this is where I'm needed. Because sometimes kasi we have these visions of ourselves na, ito yung gusto ko. And then, but also you get to ask, but saan ba ako gustong dalhin ng universe? Saan kaya ako mas makakatulong? And that's so nice because you've already reached that level that people are still, most people are still struggling to find, saan ba ako dito sa mundo? Saan ba ang lugar ko sa mundo? And you yourself have found it, like, this is my place in the world, and this is how I bring, like, how I am of value here. I take care of other people here. It's so nice.
If
Yeah.
if I may just say at this point,
Yeah.
I've said a lot about, my vision and my wife's vision coming here to
Yeah.
Jensen. I just want to emphasize also and shout out na rin, no, to my team at Jensen site, my psychologists, my therapists, who are also my friends. The reason I'm able to do what I'm doing now is because of them I realized na I don't carry this work alone. No? And that's really I guess in question mo kanina, that's really what sustains me. That's really what keeps me going. Knowing na hindi ako mag-isa sa laban. Knowing that there are people who share my values. There are people who share or who want to do the work that we're doing also. And we lean on each other. We actually have, I guess, parang case supervisions once a week every Saturday. And it's also a slash team dinner na rin. Kasi it's also our way to remind ourselves na hindi ka mag-isa in helping all of these people.
Yeah,
Parang
I
ganun.
agree because the support profession, I've always said it takes a toll on your mental health. Again, you have to compartmentalize, which you realize you were good at.
Yeah.
But again, at the end of the day, I also admitted na now you're spreading yourself thinly. One of these
Yeah.
days, you'll also figure it out. That's the beauty
Yeah.
of life. Always just showing up and trying. It doesn't
Uh-huh.
have to be perfect every single day. That's what I also tell because a lot of my clients also they struggle with perfectionism. If
Mm-hmm.
it's not perfect, I don't like it, or I'm just not gonna show up if it's not perfect, or if
Uh-huh.
it's not perfect, they beat themselves up. But the beauty of life is just show up every single day. Just
Uh-huh.
show up for people you love, show up for people you care about, show up for people who you can help. Because
Uh-huh.
just by showing up is 80% now of the work. Yeah, it's so nice. I'm
The
so proud of
presence.
what you're doing. So nice.
Thank you, Gerald. Me also, man. When I found out that you're into coaching, the coaching space,
Yeah,
sabi nga sa sarili ko, "Oh, this is gonna be a good conversation because we're gonna have a lot of overlap now with the things we
yeah,
believe in, the things that we're trying to do, how we're trying to help people. Kaya that's the reason why I grabbed this opportunity with you when you invited me. Kasi I knew that it was gonna be a good conversation and a meaningful conversation between us.
yeah.
Aside from the fact na ang tagal na natin di nagkita.
Yes.
And then
Yeah. Actually, I work with psychologists as well.
mm,
And then, kasi the big difference, and I tell this at the onset when I do discovery calls, is when you have to deal with heavy emotions, when you have to explore the past, what happened in the past. If may hugot ka, you have to see a psychologist because I can't do that work for you. Because here in
hmm,
coaching, I can only guide you to the next steps because I'm doing executive, not life coaching.
okay.
So, if I feel at the onset that someone is carrying deeper pain, I
Mhm,
recommend talaga. And the thing that I
mhm,
learned, which was taught by my psychometrician, sabi niya, if the emotions are not stable, you can't find good insight. And what is your goal in coaching? To help them find
mhm.
insight. So they have to be stable first. And so I also use other tools. I do psychological testing to make sure that they are emotionally stable. And if they're not, I really refer. And I really insist you have to see your psychiatrist or you have to see your psychologist because then coaching will not be meaningful for you.
So parang I guess in that context, coaching is kind of similar also to counseling. Kasi for example sa couple counseling, sa family counseling, if a member is like carrying deeper wounds na or severely disturbed,
Yeah.
kailangan i-stabilize muna before you proceed with say with couple counseling. Parang
Yeah.
ganun. Kasi it's not gonna work. They're not gonna find insight like you said.
Mm. People have to be emotionally stable first before you
Yeah.
can work with them in coaching. You have to be honest at the onset na, oh, this is something that is not workable with me. You have to work with
Uh-huh.
someone else first. And then maybe we can work on your goals. The point there is we go back to what you said. How can you give when you don't have anything for yourself?
Yeah.
If you want to be a leader, if you want to lead, but you're empty,
Yeah.
what can you give to others? This is one question that I would like to how we could how I would like to end the podcast.
Mhm.
If someone here is listening and they're quietly struggling, but they haven't made the first step step towards healing yet, what would
Mhm.
you say to them?
Okay. Um, so actually, if they're listening right now, no, what I would say is number one, what you're going through, what you're feeling right now, baka hindi lang natin, we're not realizing it, but there are so many other people in the world who know what you're going through because they're also going through it. Even just telling yourself that you know what, there are a lot of people, other people are going through this. It also means na there are a lot of other people who will be able to understand it. And what's missing is that first step of actually reaching out, no? Some would say na, pero yung parents ko naman, hindi naman sila, sabi natin, open to mental health. And what I will say is, your parents are not the only people in your life who will be able to help you. They will say also na parang, I don't want to be a burden to my friend. I don't want to open up kasi maging burden ako. And then I will remind them na parang, don't you feel like na if the tables were turned, you would want your friend to tell you? So why can't you afford yourself that same kindness, that same grace that you're very willing to offer to your friend? Diba? So let's not kumbaga it's not a one-way street, it's a two-way street. That's the most common hesitation na narinig ko. Dok, ayoko maging pabigat, no? And I always tell them, what will happen if all of us ganito, no, in our relationships? No? Ayoko maging pabigat. Even in the, nobody's gonna open up, everybody's gonna feel isolated. And then in the first place, hindi ka naman sigurado na pabigat ka. Your friend never said na pabigat ka. Okay? It's just how we feel. And even though how we feel is valid, it's not always true, no? So yun yung gusto kong sabihin.
Yeah, because it's always the first step to seeking help. Na parang people already know they're not in a good place in their lives. But then they hesitate because they think, yun nga, parang, ay, what if, kasi yung parents ko, they don't think that, this is valid, what I'm going through. I just need to pray more. kulang ramang kag simba. Oy, kulang ramang kag ampo.
Very
And then,
common, especially in the
Yeah.
Philippines.
right?
Very
So,
common. Although, Gerald, I will say, no, na when I
Yeah.
hear that comment, na kulang ka lang sa prayer, kaya ireklamo sa akin ng client ko, na yun daw ginasabi ng parents niya. I will
Oh.
emphasize na spirituality has a place in
Yeah.
mental health. But it's not the only thing na kailangan
Yeah.
ng tao. Mm.
Yeah,
Parang
because what if you feel like you don't belong? And honestly, community. Because I've struggled a lot in the past, and then once I found the right community, the right people,
ganun.
it's key. Just really knowing that people are going to be there for you no matter what, and giving yourself the grace and compassion. Like again, if you can give it to a stranger, if you can be kind to a stranger, if you can be kind to your friend, why can't you also give it to yourself?
Yeah.
You can be kinder to yourself. That was like, I think, 2 big lessons in my mental health journey that, again, I also like to tell people. Don't hesitate to ask for help because sometimes people can't read your mind. Like if you're quietly struggling, especially I work with a lot of high functioning people. So, people can't read your mind and they'll just see your actions. And for them, as long as you're still there showing up every day, they think you're okay.
You're okay.
But
Yeah.
if you're not gonna share and say, "Oh, I'm actually not okay. I'm feeling this. I'm thinking this," then they'll never know, and they'll never be able to offer the help that you need. So it takes a lot of courage also to speak up about your situation. Yes, thank you. And so, where can they find you?
I'm not sure about everybody's situation kung saan kayo listening right now. So
Yeah.
maybe the best way na to reach out to us if you need professional help is on Facebook. So our name there is Jensen Psych Mental Health Hub. And then just send us a message if you need any sort of help with your mental health, whether it's a psychiatrist or a psychologist or therapist. We're gonna talk you through it, next steps. So don't worry, you just really have to reach out.
Thank you so much, Kev. Thank you so much for your time. Because I'm like,
Thank you.
honestly, like now talking to you, I realize how busy you are, but you still found the time to talk to us. And it's so nice, really.
I had a really good time talking to you and, talking about these things. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course, always. Thanks for listening. If this episode gave you something to think about, or if you're curious to learn more, you can find Dr. Kevin Veneracion and Jensen Psych Mental Health Hub on Facebook. I'll also leave the link in the show notes. Feel free to share this with someone who might find it helpful. This Could Be Something, and I'm Dr. Gerald Dahino. See you in the next episode.